Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Cart to Cart. It's just me, Brenda, Trudy, and Anne this week. Diana's off, but we're going to talk about community and how important it has been to us to be a part of the Shopify community, other tech communities we've been a part of, building community, participating, and just that we like people and we like each other, and we're going to talk about it.
Hi, so excited to be here for our episode 3. We're sad to be missing Diana today, but we are going to do our best to have a fun conversation without her. And today I'm kind of excited about the topic. I think it'll be a good, interesting one, talking about community. We're really going to dive deep into what community means for us and how we've encountered and enjoyed it.
I think community is really important working with Shopify and working as entrepreneurs working on apps like in the ecosystem, because you can be small and it can be so solitary. And maybe I'm just speaking for myself because I work mostly for myself, but I rely on the network and the community so much, not just for knowledge and growth, but also just for peer company. I don't know, like what is your experience up in Toronto? What's the community like closer to the mothership?
I mean, it's really thriving, I think. Like, we have a lot of partner meetups in like the last few years since the pandemic lockdowns. We've had at least probably 1 to 2 meetups a month for partners, which is really nice. And especially coming out of the pandemic, that was like my first socialization in public was like with the partner. So I feel like especially connected. And then there's the Builder Sundays at the actual Shopify, which is also nice to like meet.
Yeah, are those
people.
every Sunday?
No, they come out with dates. So they'll come out with the dates. I guess not like holiday weekend Sundays, but it's like a lot of Sundays, like 3 Sundays out of the month, probably.
I was kind of like, I should have planned my trip in a way because I'm going up to Toronto in the next couple weeks. I would have loved to have gone to a Builder Sunday up there, but I'm not going to be there on a Sunday, so oh well. But it's okay because I'm going to another meetup that I'm really excited about. What meetup is that, Anne?
So super excited. On February 12th, we are going to be hosting our Women in E-commerce meetup. And we previously did a series of these in 2024. It is incredibly grassroots. When we did them in 2024, this is actually going to be a bit more of an official, more professional, I guess, event. We are co-sponsoring with Domain. Really excited for that. And it's going to be just a meeting of people who when we had them previously, we were able to get merchants and SEO experts and really anyone that had any kind of connection with e-commerce. So it wasn't like it was just developers or just merchants. It was all this overlapping of people with different interests. And we had some really good conversations to come out of them. So I'm hoping that will happen again in February. And we're going to continue to hold them as long as people want to keep showing up to them.
Love that. It sounds like both of you have run multiple types of events before and done events before. And I'm wondering what you think is the best, or what have you found as a successful format for like community meetups?
Well, for the meetups that we were running in 2024, because they were very small and we kind of just grassroots, there's like, maybe 15 to 20 people per meetup. We always had somebody to talk about something. So somebody talked about SEO or somebody talked about development or their experience on Shopify as a merchant. But the fun thing that it kind of just became like a group discussion where like a merchant would put up their store and then everybody would like talk about that store and like what they could do based on their own expertise. So it kind of just became like a round table discussion, which was really fun. Of course, if you get more people, then it's harder to do that type of thing. But I always like to have at least a speaker for 20 to 30 minutes to have a point of discussion, but then a lot of networking so that people can just chat.
I was just going to ask Trudy because I know she was involved in running the Rails Girls meetup. So I just wanted to get her experience on that as well.
Yeah, so Rails Girls, it's so funny because concurrently I ran Rails Girls and the Shopify app meetup at the same time. And So the Rails Girls, we also did that where it was mostly just one speaker who was giving something to talk about and then networking. So that was the format of that. The Shopify app dev, we did more workshops, like how to actually do something. And workshops are really fun, but they're also really hard because you have to have everybody's trying to download all the node modules at the same time. And that just like usually shuts things down, or they think it's a DDoS attack or something. So running workshop is always going to be a lot harder. Although one time we did run a Rails Girls workshop for beginners, for ladies learning code, and we got basically people who had never coded before to make a sort of rudimentary Pinterest, which was like very exciting.
Whoa.
To do that in like one afternoon was like pretty fun. But workshops are much harder to do, so generally having like somebody talk about an expertise and then networking, I think it's always just a good classic format.
Yeah, I think the same out here. I mean, another reason why community's been really on my mind lately is because I had in the past couple weeks a ton of Shopify events to go to, which was so great. Especially, I feel like 6 months out, or actually longer, from the last editions, which was the last real big time where we all get together. And so it was just a bunch of people got together in New York. There was some Shopify people in town. Actually, like Galen King, who I think most people in the Shopify ecosystem knows because he's really good at community. When he lived in New York, he used to always help get us together. And then he moved to Vermont, and then we don't get together as much, but he came down. And so then we all got together. And then I went to some events around NRF conference that was here. And then I went to Shopify had a developer meetup in their new office last week, which was, I think was kind of like a really good format, similar to what you described, where there was a panel. And so that was kind of the talking point, and it was about editions and kind of going into the details about the new features that came out in editions, and leads on each of those teams were there from Shopify on the panel. And Liam was there, which was so great. Liam Griffin and leading the panel. And then there was like networking time around it too. But it always feels like not enough networking time. But afterwards, a few of us went out and talked more, but the consensus was that it's really the talking to each other, and that is the most valuable thing. But having that kind of topic or point is the most valuable. I was also really impressed because in New York meetups, I've run a few meetups outside of Shopify, like a JavaScript meetup and a CSS meetup. And we used to charge a fee only just to get people to come. Because if we didn't charge a fee, we'd get a third of the signups would actually come. If we charged a fee, and it would just be like $2 or $5 or something, we'd get 2/3. That was kind of standard across all the meetups. But the Shopify meetup had, I think they said 80 people out of 100 show up, which was really, really good. But it was like in the Shopify office. So I really hope they do that again, and they do more. And I've been really encouraged by Shopify saying that they want to reach out and be more involved in partners and community. But I also think it's important for us to do things ourselves too. And I'm really inspired by what you all are doing. And so I'm going to come up to Toronto and hang out with you.
We're so excited. Hopefully we'll have less snow by then, but
well, I've got snow here, so it's, whatever.
That's true. Yeah. You know how to dress for it. What do you like when you were first starting your career? If you can think back to that many, many years ago, do you think that community was an important part of networking? Did you find any benefits to it that way?
100%. The only reason I have a career is through networking, I think. And so I think I see the value in it, and that's where I go. Like, I started taking classes through Girl Develop It in 2010, like right when they launched in New York, and just really had just love the teachers. It was just such a positive environment that they would have events and I would just go to everything. And I think that's the thing too, is that I learned is that you can't just go to something once and think it's going to change your life. Like, you have to really get value out of something. Like, you need to go consistently and meet the same people over and over. And that's like really where you formulate the relationships and get the most value out of things. But it was through that I got my first real job. Before, I had been working like freelancing in tech and was more of a designer. And through that, one of the instructors there hired me to work on a Ruby on Rails app at a startup. And that was the first time I'd ever really used GitHub and really used a proper dev environment and learned all the things. So And that was just because I'd go to all the events. And I was at an event and said, oh, I'm looking for a job. And she was like, oh, come work for us. And even like the other best thing that happened to me that like really gave me a lot of opportunity was speaking at conferences. And I spoke at a conference, CSS DevConf, which was one of the best conferences that was around back in the day. And they had like people at the conference would vote for their favorite talk during the conference. And I won the best talk of the conference in 2017, which was crazy. But I talked about CSS Grid, and it was when CSS Grid was just launching. And the only reason I knew about CSS Grid was because I helped run a meetup that Jen Simmons, who worked for Mozilla Firefox at the time, who's an advocate and amazing.
Oh yeah,
CSS.
everybody knows Jen Simmons.
Oh my gosh. I mean, and I learned it all from her, helping her I didn't even run the meetup. I just like gave her a space to have the meetup, and then got to learn everything while that was launching. Was like, this would be so cool to like put in a conference talk as this is coming on. And then that gave me the opportunity to travel around the world and speak at conferences and things like that. So I absolutely feel like I have a career because I like to network.
And I think you bring up a great point, is that community isn't just about going to an event one time, because sometimes you see that where people are told, network, and people just go and they're like, I need a job. And you're like, okay, well, we don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of awkward. Whereas I think that true networking or true community is like consistency, like meeting people, even if they're different events, because, there's lots of tech events. So you see the same people. You'll see people at Rails Girls, and you'll see people at a Shopify event, and you'll see people out there. But speaking is also, I used to be so terrified of speaking. And then I would go to the Rails Girls meetups. And then I was like, my dream was like, one day I'll give a talk there. And then I did. And then eventually I went so consistently that they're like, do you want to help us run the event? And I was like, sure. And that's how I got into it. And then obviously at that point, I was just speaking regularly at the event, not even giving talks, but just in front of people. And that just makes you more comfortable in front of people. I'm still not actually that comfortable talking in front of people in real life, but it gets easier the more you do it.
I totally agree about putting yourself out there and trying to be a speaker. I find that teaching and speaking and doing that type of thing can really, one, it helps to give you confidence. And two, especially if you're talking about a subject that you might not have a huge amount of comfort level with, or even if you do have a huge comfort level with it, talking about it, all of a sudden it cements that knowledge. And then you also get to meet other people in the community that are super interested in that topic as well. So you get to share and exchange information. And some of the best conversations that I've had have been after I've given a talk.
Yeah, totally. I think one of the reasons, because I was just worried, I don't know, I love to get up on a stage or whatever. So I don't like really have that fear. But I was worried that nobody would care about whatever topic I cared about or wanted to talk about. And so that's why the first conference I spoke at was the CSS DevConf in 2015, because it's the topics too are voted on. Like you submit your topic and a briefing, and then the community votes on what they find interesting. So it's like, okay, this makes me feel better that I'm going to go in here and speak on something that at least a certain amount of people, enough people thought were interesting, and they're going to come to my talk. And that also was the type of talk that you're talking about, which was, I just dug into SVG. I was something I was curious about. I wanted to learn what SVG code all actually meant. And so I built a talk around it, and I learned so much. And that is the most useful thing I have ever done, I think, is understand SVGs and how the code works. And now I just hand edit my SVGs, and I know how to use SVGs like so well, and that was great. But I think it's also, I feel like I'm glad I have that type of personality that likes to meet people and go out there, and that's just been helpful for me. But I also love it. I love talking to people. I love meeting people. I love hearing what everybody's doing. And one thing I especially love about the Shopify community is that everybody I've met, like even competitors, are friendly. People will collaborate. Like people have their own agencies, and then they're like, oh, but he and I got together and we have an app. It's just very sharing, and we lift all each other up, at least the people who I've met. And I really love that.
It's true. And I think that's another important part of building community, is having some good standards of which you don't allow negativity or things to get into, because that can sort of infect the community. Yeah, Rails Girls, we would give the code of conduct at the beginning of everything that was like, this is a positive community, so we're not going to tolerate negativity, and we're not going to tolerate people try to make people feel bad about their knowledge or anything.
I'd love to get segueing from that, I'd love to get your thoughts on the Shopify partner Slack was shut down in December. So what are your thoughts on online communities versus in-person communities?
I have to say, I had a big trepidation about online communities because I'm dyslexic and it's very easy for me to like misread things. And then I would get so nervous to respond because I'm like, did I even read what they said correctly? So that I was very nervous about being in online communities more than real life communities.
I really miss the partner Slack, even though it did devolve into a lot of spam. That community is why I built a theme too. So like, you know, like from getting encouragement on there and participating in there. So I miss that community. I wish it had been more moderated so that it didn't devolve into what it did. And I have talked to Shopify, internal Shopify people who also miss that community. And actually, every time I talk to an internal Shopify person, they are so happy to talk to partners and have opportunities to talk to partners. So I hope that's part of the partnership that Shopify just announced, that they're really going to invest more in partnerships moving forward, but they haven't really talked yet about how that's going to look. But I hope that there's more interaction because it's really valuable for both sides to understand a little more, to just build better products and help merchants more, is when like we kind of all understand each other and our experiences and our experience with merchants and our experiences with the code or whatever.
That's true, because I do remember like asking questions in that Slack, and sometimes Shopify folk will come into my DMs and be like, exactly where are you having that problem? Can we help you? And it would be so nice.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, also, again, I work for myself most of the time. And so I'm in like 5 Slack communities because I just need to like, what's somebody saying? You know, like, I need a distraction. If I want a distraction, there it is. But I just need people talking. I just need to hear things, not feel alone.
I think as someone who lives a good hour and a half outside of a major city center, I think online communities have made such a big difference for me. I've never been a big fan of commuting, so having to go in. So I've been working remotely since 2016. And one of the things that I noticed is there were things that I missed about going into the office every day and being able to have that sort of chit chat and just being able to, you know, converse with people. So what we really tried to do with the company that I was working at was make sure that we still had that sense of community in online. So playing games sometimes, we would have meetups like quarterly. So there was still that connection, because as much as I want to live my entire life online and never leave the house, there is something to be said for once you meet that person in real life, having that type of connection, but also realizing that we are a global economy and it's not so easy for everybody to just hop on a plane or come to all the meetups, like, you know, after work. It's sometimes not convenient for people. So I think the forced going online has made it so much easier to connect with people that you may not have been able to a couple of years ago. The fact that we are all in 3 separate places and recording a podcast together is testament to that. So I'm really thankful for online communities.
Yeah. Have any of you ever spoken at an online conference or participated in an online conference? How did you find that experience?
I not only spoke at an online conference, but I also taught online for a little bit. And honestly, it is so much more difficult than speaking in person, because you don't get that feedback and that energy from people that you're speaking with. It's still doable. I just find that you're not able to read the room in the same way that you would be if you were in person with people.
Yeah, I spoke at a conference and I was abroad. And so I just had my laptop. So I just had my slides and I just didn't know what I was, I was just talking and like looking at my slides. And then I remember afterwards, and it was like a 40-minute talk. Afterwards, there was like a chat and I like left and went to the chat and I was like, oh my God, I was so scared. Like, what are they going to say about me? Like, they could have been saying like, who is this girl? She doesn't know what she's talking about. And I wouldn't have known, but it ended up to be fine. But I'm actually going to be on a panel for Style and Scale, which Zachary McClung is running. So I'm excited about that, to see how that goes, like doing an online panel. I haven't done that before at a conference.
Me too. We can compare notes.
Are you on it too?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But I do agree. There's always, and there's always sort of that technical glitch where, well, not always, but sometimes you can't hear someone properly, or your connection drops.
Or
The
you
internet
accidentally
just
turn into
isn't.
a cat.
Yes, or a potato. Who knows? So that's not going to happen in the face-to-face environment. Even now when we're recording the podcast, I always have to be conscious of, okay, where is my dog? Is he going to bark? All of these different considerations. Whereas when you're giving a talk in person, you're very like locked in, you're there in person. That's what you're going to be focusing on. Going back to just like community though, like in terms of organizations, how do you think that, because we're coming at it from like a developer experience, do you think that people who are selling on Shopify or just in e-commerce in general, how could they benefit from improving their brand, like their brand community, like loyalty, that kind of aspect?
Oh yeah, I think there's two types of communities that merchants are really a part of, and that one is like merchant to merchant where they can talk with each other. And I know there's like Slack channels specifically for merchants, and I'm sure that's very valuable because they're like, what app should we use? Like, and asking very like merchant focused questions. And then also for their brand, developing communities around their own products for people is also important to stand out, especially in a world where there's like now just endless shopping options.
I know. I mean, there's still Facebook groups, I think, are still an important place where people, especially merchants, I'm in a few of those, and I don't really participate unless there's like a theme question that maybe I can answer. But even just being in these Shopify commerce Facebook merchant Facebook groups and seeing what people are talking about, I want to go more in the Reddit and see what's going on in there. But Reddit isn't a part of my
Interesting. I'm a Reddit girl, so I'm not in the Facebook groups, but I am in the Reddit groups for the Shopify merchants.
Then we need to just share notes.
Yeah.
They started to do the builder days in New York last semester. Am I in school? But, at the end of last year. And it was Builder Wednesdays, and it was like an all-day co-working day. And I found it was mostly merchants that were coming there. I don't know if they're doing them anymore, but I thought that was interesting. And maybe just a difference between like Toronto and New York is I think New York, there's a lot of makers here, and there's a lot of merchants, and there's a lot of agencies and stores.
This is true. Back in like just before the pandemic, like early 2020, we went down to LA in the Shopify offices there, and we did a presentation for merchants. And I feel like that would be a great option for Shopify to do, where you have like technical people come in and give advice to merchants, because that was really fun. And the merchants are like so fun because they ask so many questions. They'll just like, they want to know everything.
That's what I think is really cool about the meetup that you're starting, is that it is, or that you're running because you've already done it, but the women e-commerce meetup, that it's for everybody. It's for like to give more opportunities for us to interact with each other.
Many, many, many years ago, remember when blogging was really popular? Everybody had a blog of some kind, whether it was recipe or fashion or what have you. I was working with this organization called Camp Tech, and they had the brilliant idea where we went to a blogging conference and set up essentially a help desk. So we would just sit there throughout the entire conference, and people would come up, if they might have a laptop, they might not, and they would just sit down and they would just ask us questions about their sites, whether it was WordPress or Squarespace or Shopify, anything. And it was so interesting just to get that frontline knowledge of, oh, here are the common problems that people are running into. It was such a great experience. Whether it's online or offline, it's amazing how short your decision-making cycle can be once you have a recommendation from someone that you know is a real person.
Yeah.
It is, you're just going to believe them. You're just going to say, yes, I will check that. There's so many times where I've met someone at a meetup or in a forum, and if I know who they are and they say something, it just carries greater weight than any type of marketing page.
And I mean, this is why we know each other.
Yeah.
Also, is through all three of us caring about community and investing and getting to know each other. I mean, Anne reached out to me out of the blue like a year and a half ago, just to be like, hey, want to meet for a chat? And I love that's something I don't think I have the confidence to do. I can like go into a room and start talking to people, but like, I don't know, kicking off something one-on-one like that. And I thought that was so cool. Thanks for doing that.
I think it's because I had heard you on a podcast
That's
and
so funny.
hearing your story and your background, and there just were so many similarities to my own. And I thought to myself, oh, I can't not reach out.
I think that also brings up a good point is like, if people are nervous about going to in-person meetings, then there's online communities. And if people are nervous about online communities, then you can find an in-person meetup. And I think that there's no right or wrong way to necessarily participate in a community. And you can be like more in the background of just participating or observing, or you could be more in the foreground of organizing. But I think there's no wrong way to really do community. I think you need all the different types of people
Yeah,
to
for sure.
participate.
But I think like reflecting on our conversation right now, I think when I think about why I got into tech, I like the first thing that comes to mind is, well, you know, I like to constantly learn and I like to change and I would get bored. I mean, now I'm kind of like, okay, let's calm down for a little bit. Like, do we need to change this much all the time? But I also really think it was all of the community aspects of tech, especially coming up in like the 2010 era when there were so many meetups, and compared to other industries, I really love that aspect. That I think community has always been important in tech. Open source has that vibe, you know, it just, tech always had a community vibe that was important. And I think that is one reason why I've stuck with it as well.
It's true. And the Shopify community is really great for being like very welcoming. And I feel like you see people go from working at Shopify to working for a merchant, or working for an app company, or working for a theme company, or vice versa, like working in the ecosystem as a partner and then going to Shopify to work there. Like, it's just such a interesting community that people, once they're in, they don't really want to leave because all the people involved are so great.
Yeah. And I love how many people leave Shopify and then continue to work with Shopify as entrepreneurs or build apps and et cetera like that. And that feels encouraged by Shopify.
Yeah.
Like Diana.
If I think if I had a bit of advice for people that were just starting to get involved in communities, and that was great advice, Trudy, with you can either go online or you can go in person, depending on what you prefer. But advice that I would have is to go in not trying to sell, not trying to get something immediately out of that community, but think about more how you can contribute. Can you do a talk? Can you volunteer? Can you listen to what people are saying and help them in some way, instead of always just going there as, oh, I'm just trying to get a job or I'm just trying to network? Because I think you're going to get more out of it if you think about it as the holistic view instead of what can I get from it.
It's true. And I feel like it's so interesting because both Anne and I taught at a coding school in Toronto, and that coding school was very connected to Ladies Learning Code, which was like a volunteer opportunity to teach. And we would always encourage people, like, once you've learned a bit, it's a great opportunity to network, to go meet people, to be part of the community. But the other thing that I always would tell people is, like, you will never feel like you know something until you know more than another person. So you won't feel confident in your own skills until you go teach at Ladies Learning Code for people who know nothing. And then you'll be like, oh, actually, I do know something. And so
that's so true.
It's not just good to help out with the community, but you do get a lot out of it too.
Yeah. Builds confidence for sure.
And with that being said, I just want to, for anyone that is listening and is nervous about being part of a community or just wants to expand their community, feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. Each of us are on there. You can look us up by our names. I am always willing to talk to people. I'm sure we all are. So just putting that out there.